What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our prediction show where we're going to try to break down what we think might happen as Birmingham Legion travel to face the Riverhounds at Highmark Stadium for the first time this season. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me is my good buddy Justin Ashcraft. Justin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. How's marathon training coming for you?
Marathon training is coming slower than I'd like. But I think I'm confident enough at this point that I will finish. And that's really the goal. I don't really have a speed goal or whatever. I'm just all right, if I can finish, I'll be happy.
You've done this one before though, right? Have you done the half here?
I have done the half in Pittsburgh before, yeah. So this is number 2.
What are the hills like for the half?
So at least the last time I did it, I didn't take a real close look at the map. But there's 2 primary bridges or 3 bridges basically you cross. So you cross from downtown to North Shore, then you cross from North Shore to West End, and then you cross, I don't remember if it's the Birmingham. It's one of those bridges, south side back towards downtown. And so those all have their, undulations as a bridge. And then, but then you have to come back up from like between Oakland and downtown up into like where Duquesne is, and then over the hill down into downtown. So, and that's like mile 10, which is like, why do we have to put that hill at the end of the race? But it's fine because then the last like mile of the race is like straight downhill.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I know a couple of people who do marathons, and they talk about how they love traveling outside of Pittsburgh to do them because they're all relatively flat, and Pittsburgh is just not that really anywhere you go here. Yeah, no, so it's not great. Well, good. Glad training is going well. Let's get to the news and talk about what we think about Birmingham. First of all, this week it was announced that both Etu and Biasi made the bench for the team of the week for the USL. Do you think those were the right players from the Hounds to make the bench, and do you think that they should have made more than the bench?
No, I think the bench is about right. For Biasi for sure. I think it wasn't a super like standout performance, I would say, but it wasn't, there's nothing wrong with it either. So I think like the bench is probably the right call there. I think a lot of times I feel like to make the team of the week as a defender, you got to get a goal off of a header or something, and that's what like generally gets you across the line for the actual team of the week. Etu's a little confusing to me, not because he's playing terribly, but I think I have such a high bar for him as well, and so like kind of the same way we feel about Biasi too. And I know you talked to him a little bit about that, but I feel like I've got a high bar for it too. And so his like baseline performance for me starts at like a 8. And so even if he gives an 8, I'm like, come on, I need a 9 or 10. And I feel like he gave an 8 this week. So maybe the team of the week bench is fair, but I'm like, I don't know. It wasn't like one of his best, in my opinion, but it wasn't a bad performance either.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, to get on the team of a week as a defender, you need to score. He did get the assist, so maybe that's how he got on. Biasi did not, but like it just now dawned on me that both of our wingbacks made the list, which was interesting in a shutout. But yeah, kudos to those guys for making the bench. We'll sort of see what happens as we go into this week. Couple other bits of news. Beto played for Puerto Rico on Tuesday against the Dominican Republic. He is expected to be back against Birmingham, so a short little trip for him, but good to see him get some international minutes. Josh's Dog of War video dropped yesterday, highlighting that, this whole game with Birmingham is a bit of a one-sided affair. So if you have not seen that, go check it out. It's over on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram at this point. I had to just sort of think through where we posted that. The other big news was I got a chance to catch up with Kenny Forbes. If you have not heard that, go check out that episode. It was fun. We mainly reflected sort of on his career and the retirement ceremony that happened this past weekend and sort of what's next for Kenny. We didn't talk a ton about Birmingham specifically during the show, but I thought what was interesting was off air. He and I were chatting. Well, a couple things. One, I added him to the board behind me because as soon as we stopped recording, he was like, "What is that board? And like, whose names are on it? And how do I get on that list?" And so I was like, "All right, well, you're technically a coach now, so I'm gonna squeeze you in there between Bushy and Vincent, and we'll start keeping tabs on when you're on the show." But got some more clarity on sort of what his specific role is as a coach. And he was saying that, we talked during the reaction show after the Hartford match that it felt like we were missing that cutting pass, that like we just we're concerned about the offense because it feels like we don't have anybody that can break down something like a low block. And what was interesting was talking to Kenny off air was he said the exact same thing. He said that when they headed into the locker room after the game, he thought that the team actually did a really bad job at sort of making that cutting pass to lead to a goal. But his specific role within the team is to go back and rewatch the footage and then present the footage about how specifically the Hounds performed and what sort of things that they can tweak and change heading into the following week. And he said when he actually went back and watched the footage, he thought the opposite. He thought we actually did a really good job because that low block was so tight that the only way we were going to get through that was with a perfect pass. And he just he's not sure if at this point in the development of the team this early in the season, if we can make that perfect pass. He said the one time that they were able to break them down, he said Danny had nobody within 5 yards of him. So clearly that was a case where we were able to create some space and it worked. And so it was just interesting how just talking about the tactics and how he said, it really just sort of changed his opinion on things. Was really interesting. And so I think it's going to be fun. We're going to try to get Kenny on a couple more times over the course of the season to do that kind of breakdown with us, like on air so that everyone else can hear it. But it was fascinating. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on sort of that, Justin, or anything else that I talked about with him before we start talking about Birmingham.
Yeah, two things I think stuck out to me. One, in the interview, definitely go back and listen to the show. I did think it was interesting just him talking about I guess it was the 15 and 19 teams, the 15 Rochester team, the 19 Riverhounds team, and just how the maturity of the teams and how he, thought that they really had a maturity to know what Bob wanted, to be able to respond to criticism well, and all of that kind of stuff. And then kind of in tandem with that, him talking about, you asked him his piece of advice and he just said, be more open to criticism and feedback and all that kind of stuff. And I think that is interesting because I think that is a problem with some young players. Sometimes they come in and they don't take feedback well, they don't take criticism well. And it might have been the system that they were brought in. He talked about his coach in Jamaica being like, nope, just play 10, don't play defense, whatever else. And now he's got to play defense in the USL. And I think that was just a really interesting comment, thinking about some of the young players coming through and the young players that, the young players that are happening on the team now. And then I think to his passing comment, I think I would generally agree. I was the one making some of those comments about, hey, I don't feel like we're making that cutting pass or the, being as incisive as we needed to be with our passing. And so I agree with him at some point. I think thinking back over the game, I think we did what we could there. And I think I would like to see as we go forward, maybe that's more of the thought that I had as we go forward. I think we need to see more of those kind of cutting passes or 1-2 touches around the corner, those types of things that get you behind a low block or underneath a low block. But I think those will come. And then as long as you get that one chance and that one perfect pass and Danny takes it like he needs to, then, I think, you're doing okay and you're winning games that way. But I would like to see us do a little bit more. My only counter argument to that is how much possession and how many passes we had in the game last week. I think you have to have this feeling that as the team, even if you make the cutting pass and it doesn't come off, you're going to get the ball back pretty quickly. And so I think it's okay to make a few more mistakes to potentially have that one pull off, because I think if we don't take those risks now, when we get toward the end of the season, we won't be taking those risks because we won't have tried it. We have to try it to make the risk to have it come off later in the season. And so that'd be my one counter argument to that. But I'm okay with Coach Kenny telling me I'm wrong.
No, that's a really, really good point. What'll be interesting is, and this sort of segues into our Birmingham conversation here, was just that he sort of said that they're actually expecting the opposite from Birmingham, and we'll see if that's how it plays out. But they're expecting them to come and play and want to attack us. It sounded like they were not expecting Hartford to come and attack us, and so they kind of knew that they would have more of the ball and they have to work around. If Birmingham are coming to attack us, he feels like we'll probably get a lot more chances on the break to spring guys in behind, which is interesting because we've talked about how, it feels like Augie really hasn't had a chance to shine because he hasn't been given those chances because we've been so focused on possession and we're not taking like risks like that. So this could be a very interesting game to watch just from that perspective based on his comment. Couple things about Birmingham, and then I want to get sort of your thoughts on things. In terms of, notable players on the team, we've played Birmingham for the past few seasons, as Josh mentioned in his Dogs of War video. Lots of familiar names. Matt Van Oekel was back in goal, as he always is. Enzo Martinez is there in the midfield. When Kenny was on, I think it was USL All Access this past week, they asked him who would be on your Mount Rushmore of USL players, and he actually said Enzo. So Enzo's a guy that's been around. He's definitely made an impact. I expect him to make an impact in this game. Tyler Pasher is also on the team, but he has not yet made the bench this season. But regardless, get those drinks ready for those of you who partake in the Tyler Pasher drinking game because, that's always a good time. In terms of how Birmingham were actually doing this season, they have not yet won a game, but the teams that they've played, I think we would all kind of expect to be in playoff contention. So it's hard to kind of gauge how good they actually are. Their first game, they lost 3-1 to Loudoun, but then they drew 1-1 with Louisville. And then last week they drew 2-2 with Detroit. Now Detroit did give up an own goal, but regardless, I fully expect all three of those teams to be in the playoff conversation. And so I don't think that you can look at the results as a prime indicator of just how good they're going to be as they come into Pittsburgh. Good thing is they've never actually won in Pittsburgh. So we kind of have precedent there. And they have given up 6 goals so far. So roughly 2 per game, but they've also scored 4, which is 2 more than us. So again, statistically, nothing really jumping out there. The 2 really interesting numbers when you break them down, again, we're kind of looking at 3 games, but if you look at defensively, the Hounds have faced basically a third of the shots that Birmingham has. So what that tells me is that at least in terms of how the defense is performing, Birmingham is letting in substantially more shots on goal than we are. Our defense is doing a good job of sort of shutting down shots and blocking lanes. So that could be something to keep an eye out for. And the other thing is the Hounds have made almost twice as many passes as Birmingham so far this season. So again, we knew coming in that the Hounds really wanted to focus on possession. And it sounds like, at least in terms of controlling the play and using passing to dictate the play, we're doing that more than really it's been almost every team this season when we sort of look at the stats going into it. And so Birmingham is no different. So lots of stuff I'm throwing there at you, Justin. I guess any sort of initial thoughts about Birmingham before we get into sort of player predictions and score predictions and all that?
I'm never excited to watch a game that Enzo Martinez is on the other team. So
yeah,
that's not, I don't like that. And it always, always feels like it leads to a little bit of a chippy game and all of that. But, the Hounds have got to stay mentally tough and overcome that. And I think they will. I think a couple things, looking at the passes, there's always there's always 2 reasons why a team will have fewer passes. Either they like to attack really quickly, and so they play a lot of forward balls, long balls, things like that, and they do tend to lose the ball more frequently, or they counter a lot. And I think probably what I'm expecting, if Kenny is saying, hey, they're going to come and they're going to attack and they're going to do all of that, is a lot more just forward passes and forward possession to try to break quickly. But that doesn't necessarily mean countering. And I think for the Hounds, for 2 games, I would think of 2 of the games of the season, we were on top of the opponent most of the game, and had a lot of the possession, had a lot of the passes and all that kind of stuff. So that's why you see our passes being so much higher. But I would be excited if they did come and attack, and that we would be able to get out on the counter a little bit, because I think that I think we're stronger this year than we've been the past maybe 2 or 3 years, not playing on the counter, and being able to possess and being able to keep the ball, being able to play with the ball at our feet, those sorts of things. I think we're better this year than we have been in that way. But I think, to your point, I think Augie might be a better striker when he's out on the counter or when he has space to operate. And so that could be really interesting. But to that point, I do think Augie needs to do a better job of finding the game. I think he's pressing really well, and I think that's what I have liked about his play. But I think when we have the ball, I would like to see him come back and find the game a little bit. And if that means that he and Robbie or whoever's playing right behind him, whoever that is, need to switch a little bit and play off of each other. Like, I think that's a partnership that could use some improvement. And I think that thought got me thinking a little bit just about our partnerships on the field. And it feels like the back 5, from Eric Dick, the center backs, and then Walty and Griffin, that whole square is good. Like, no notes. Please don't do anything to that square. But it feels like every other partnership on the field, whether it's the wingbacks and the wingers or that central attacking partnership, just needs some work. But those are the partnerships that have not been consistent. Garcia's been in and out, Borghi's been in and out, Mertz has switched where he's playing on the field. And so it's just that hasn't been consistent in the first 3 games of the season. And so it makes sense that those partnerships aren't as good as they could be yet. And so I hope to see some improvement in those partnerships as we go forward in the next couple games.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. One of the things I wanted to ask you was Bradley Sample got a few minutes last week. I talked to him after the game. He said he was feeling really good. It was a hamstring injury, and the Hounds actually sent out a message, I believe it was yesterday morning, that was just Bradley Sample, and I think the caption was just "Good morning," like getting people hyped up for the game and whatnot. So what would be interesting to me is, I know I'm a big proponent of Sample. I think you are as well. If Sample were to start this game, and I'm not saying that he is, it might be another case of where he gets maybe 30 minutes, get him in the 60th minute just to get a run out there. But where do you think that Sample slots in, like for whom, and how do you think he would be most effective here?
Yeah, I don't exactly know. And I think and I mean that talent wise or position wise, I think there's a fair argument that Danny and Jackson are not going to be able to play. They're not going to be able to play 90 minutes for the rest of the season. So you're going to need to do some swaps there at some point in time. And I would think that Sample would slot in for either one of them fairly well in that position. I do think that he could slot in there and kind of the holding midfielder and move Danny up to the 10 and see what happens there. I would also wouldn't mind seeing him on the right or left and seeing Mertz back centrally. So that could be a spot but I think the nice thing about Sample is he is really versatile as a player. He's got some attacking prowess, but he's also got some defensive, he's pretty much a true number 8 that he can play box to box. And so I think you can kind of put him in several different spots where you want to play him on the field. And so I think that there's some arguments for where you could put him on the field. So I wouldn't mind if he started at all, and it just depends where Bob would want him to play.
One of the things I wanted to pick your brain on as well was you predicted where players were playing in the lineup against Hartford. And the interesting thing there was it was Suber and Asumano as center backs, Beto as kind of a holding mid. I had a different perspective just from where I was sitting, and I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch the game. What did you think of Beto as sort of that holding mid? Is that something that you'd like to see continue, or would you prefer he drop back as a center back?
I was actually really impressed with him as kind of a true six, like, and I think there were some times that he got up the field that was really nice to see. I think my only complaint with it, or my only I'm not sure if I like this piece of it, was I think it limits. It feels like he and Walty want to do the same things, and so then it's like, when you have Walty and Danny playing the holding midfielders, Walty naturally wants to kind of drop back with the center backs and kind of play that role. And Danny naturally wants to go forward. And so I think that feels really good. But then when you have both Beto and Walty there, I feel like they both kind of want to drop back more. And so I think towards the middle-ish end of the game, Beto got a lot more comfortable going forward. And that helped a little bit. And Walty does too. And I think that's the thing, is Walty's a pretty good player going forward as well. And so I think they got there towards the end of the game. But I think it's like a little bit of work with the partnership there of like, all right, if I'm going to drop back, then you need to push forward. If I, and playing that kind of yo-yo effect. But I really liked him. I think, again, it's another player like Danny, Walty, Beto, Suber. They're all just super calm on the ball. And it just doesn't feel like there's any panic no matter kind of what's happening around them. They always kind of know where an outlet pass is, whether it's back, whether it's forward, whether it's to the side. They can all figure out where that outlet pass is. And I think that's a really strong kind of core in your defensive area of the field.
Yeah. How do you think we start in this one? Do you make any changes to the lineup from last week, or do you just roll with what we had?
I think it depends on the health of Sample. If the health of Sample is there and you feel like you can get 60, 70 minutes out of him, then I think you potentially make a change, and I think you potentially drop Beto back as a center back, play Walty and Danny as the holding midfielders, or play Walty and Sample as the holding midfielders and move Danny up the field. Either way, and then I think you could play Sample out on either the right or left of your attacking three there, if you want Danny in the center of the field, or in the holding part of the field. So if you feel like he's a 30-minute guy at this point in time, then no, I don't think you make any changes, and you just kind of roll with exactly what you did last week.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that makes sense. Especially, it sounds like we're in another case where we're most likely going to want to dictate play. We're at home. We kind of know what Birmingham is about. They're bringing back a lot of players from previous seasons. And so this is a good opportunity to try to continue to enforce our style. What will be very interesting to me is how this does ultimately shake out. And we're going to do score predictions here in a minute, but talking about how Birmingham might like to strike quick. Well, we also might like to strike quick. And so if it's, as you said, there's a difference between striking fast and countering. If Birmingham is trying to play a countering game, then we might have another situation where they kind of sit back and allow us to have most of the possession in their half, in the hopes that they're going to get a break, and then our defenders are in a foot race to catch up with them. And so I feel like there's more risk playing a team like Birmingham with that system, knowing that they do have some speedy players that can hurt you, whereas Hartford just didn't. It felt like we just weren't worried about Hartford doing that to us. Versus, could this be a game that's almost more like, North Carolina, where really the battle is in the midfield and you don't have a ton of chances one way or another because everyone's trying to get a little bit of space, but maybe it's not really there. So, this is going to be a fun one for sure. Give me a score prediction, Justin. How do you think this plays out?
Score prediction. I'm gonna say 2-0 Hounds. I think to your point, I think we gotta find a few more moments, like Danny getting forward, at the end of the game, and I think there was a little bit of desperation in that of like, hey, we got, I got to get forward, and then he found a spot in the box where he had 5 yards. I think we got to find a few more moments like that where we're willing to take that risk, whether it's the pass, whether it's the run forward from the midfield or something like that. You've got to find a few more moments where you can do that and get another body in the box with some space and all of that kind of stuff. We've been leaving Augie too alone, this season. And so, yes, that leave the risk of a team countering on you? Absolutely. But I think you've got to find those moments where that happens. I think the first half we did a really good job of keeping the ball in their end, but that was because the defensive midfielders were holding back, 30, 40 yards from goal and stopping everything. And so, but you got to find a few more moments where you take that risk to go get into the box. But I think 2-0 Hounds.
Yeah. I'm going to go 2-1 Hounds. I mean, on average, Birmingham's been giving up 2 goals a game. I don't have enough confidence in our offense to outperform that number. So I feel like 2 is a good shot for us, and it feels like that would be the right stepping stone after last week. I also, other than kind of the flukes that happened in earlier this season, San Antonio, North Carolina, I started to say something and now I'm going to backtrack on that. I was going to say, I don't think that, the defense has really been tested. No, the defense has been tested. Just whether or not do I think that Birmingham could put one behind us? I think they could. So I don't think they're going to win here. I think that we're going to come in once again confident. I don't know what attendance is going to be like in terms of fans. I know there's always a lot of people for the home opener. It sounds like it's going to be a nice evening. So hopefully there is a good turnout. The guys always perform better when there's a lot of people there. But I think we're going to go 2-1. Justin, any kind of final thoughts on this one before we kind of wrap it up with the rest of the game details?
Yeah, kind of along what you just said, I feel more confident about this game. And one of the reasons that I feel more confident about this game is what Luke actually said last week. We didn't get to talk about it because I think you recorded that after we recorded. But, he just talked about the game against San Antonio just wasn't a good game, and he kind of owned it personally. But as a team, he owned it and just said we didn't play the system that was laid out in front of us. We didn't play it well. We didn't do the things that we needed to do. And it wasn't a tactics issue. It wasn't a coaching issue. It was literally just an execution issue of what happened on the field. And I think, okay, you think first game of the season, that was a way that you were going into a different environment and, a place where you haven't done particularly well. And then you go into, and then you go into San Antonio, you have a game that you were up against it with the wind and everything else, but then you also just didn't execute well. And then you have the next game where you come out and you win, you possession, passes, all that kind of stuff, and you get the goal to win the game. And so that gives me a little more confidence that I think this team's coming together or feeling like it's coming together. And so it gives me confidence that I think we're going to be okay on tonight. So
Agreed. The game is at 7 p.m. at Highmark, also available on KDK Plus and ESPN Plus. If the Hounds win, this is going to be their 100th win at Highmark Stadium, which is kind of crazy. Dance Mom star Melissa Gisoni will be there. Sure, whatever. We will have our player ratings over on Substack, along with the full 90, I'm assuming, the reaction show, and all the other coverage that you've come accustomed to. Thank you, everybody. We will be back with more Hounds and Riveters content for you very, very soon.